This video is an in-depth tutorial of the installation of the JTE BoostLok. Installing this product can be completed in approximately 2 hours with basic hand tools. This installation is on the GYTR clutch pack, but your stock clutch will be very similar. This kit includes installation instructions, pneumatic control lines and fittings, pneumatic control solenoid assembly with mounting bracket, billet thrust bearing spindle assembly, plug and play wire harness for the YXZ sport shift, clutch release pin, billet clutch cover assembly with pneumatic lockout. Be sure to organize all of the parts before continuing to install. Now let's get to the installation. Begin by jacking up the car. Remove the skid plate to get access to the clutch cover and transmission drain plug. Next, remove the passenger side seat from the car. Then remove the center console paneling to access the transmission fill plug. After that, remove the transmission drain plug and drain the oil. Then remove the factory clutch cover by removing the bolts. Next, remove the bolts and retaining ring. Remove the diaphragm spring and diaphragm spring seat. Then remove the pressure plate, exposing the clutch pack. Then remove the clutch release pin, being careful to not lose the ball bearing in the bore of the clutch hub. Transfer the O-ring from the release pin to the new release pin included in the kit. Next, install the release pin into the bore of the clutch hub. Reinstall the pressure plate, diaphragm spring seat, diaphragm spring, and diaphragm spring retaining ring in the reverse order of how it was removed. Torque the bolts in an opposing pattern to 6 foot-pounds. Next, install the included thrust bearing onto the thrust bearing spindle, making sure that you pre-lubricate the bearing with transmission oil. Keep in mind that the GYTR parts are slightly different than the stock assembly. Install the thrust bearing spindle assembly onto the release pin with the bearing side of the assembly against the pressure plate. Install the BoostLok clutch cover lockout assembly with a new gasket, torquing the bolts to 7 foot-pounds. Replace the drain plug and refill the transmission with 2 quarts of preferred transmission oil. Next, we are going to work on the control circuit connections. Locate the power connector for the clutch actuator and disconnect the electrical connector. Install the control harness in line with the actuator. Make sure you choose the harness for the clutch actuator and not the harness for the shift selector. Remove the 2 bolts from the transmission case to mount the control solenoid assembly. Now install the solenoid with the included bracket, tightening the bolts down. After that, connect the control solenoid to the remaining connector on the control harness. Next, connect the high pressure control line using the supplied banjo bolt and fitting to the 12mm port on the center of the lockout cover. Then connect one side of the 11-inch high pressure line to the banjo fitting and the other to port number 2 of the control solenoid. Next, connect port number 3 of the control solenoid to your turbo or supercharger system, preferably after the intercooler so it gets cool air using the supplied hose and T-fitting. Now that your BoostLok installation is complete, start the car up to verify that it goes into gear without throwing a code. If it does throw a code, check that the electrical connections are seated firmly. Finally, replace the skid plate, center console plastics, and passenger seat. Now you can enjoy the ultimate clutch holding ability for your sport shift YXZ. With your newly installed BoostLok, you can now hold unlimited power with your engine, getting the power to the ground without any clutch slipping. Ending the argument once and for all that the sport shift can't hold the horsepower of a 3-pedal car.